Certainly, in times of war in Europe, we have to address the most pressing questions with the ones most affected, the people of Ukraine. Regrettably, just minutes ago, we received communication from the Ukrainian MOD that President Zelensky called a meeting requiring the attendance of Defense Minister Umerov. So consequently, and with great regret, I have to tell you that Minister Umerov had to cancel his participation. We kindly ask you for your understanding that in times of war and in a country at war, priorities must be set differently as we have planned here. But as you may tell from our team rearranging the stage, we found another option. So I also have good news for you, because Ambassador Oleksii Makeiev was so kind to jump in on such short notice. So thank you very much, Ambassador, for your readiness to do so. That's more than kind. He will join the live edition of the Deutsche Welle conflict zone, which is hosted by Sarah Kelly. As some of you may know, the conflict zone of Deutsche Welle is a flagship political format centered around a fact-based and rigorously moderated interview. It will be hosted, again, by Sarah Kelly. She's already waiting there. I think, Minister, over there?
Ambassador, okay,
yes.
Please. Hi. Nice
Enjoy.
To meet you. Nice to meet you. Hi, everyone. First of all, Ambassador Makeiev, thank you so much. I think we have to have a round of applause, actually, that you are going to stand in for the defense minister today.
I'm ambassador of the country at war, so there's nothing heroic here. I cover our people.
Excellent. So if you'll just humor us for a second, I'm just speaking with my team. We're getting the technical set up a little bit, and we'll have the go-ahead in just a couple of moments to begin our program. Yep. Ambassador Makeiev, welcome to Conflict Zone.
Thank you for having me.
There's been slow progress in the counteroffensive, and you're facing a lot of challenges, including war fatigue, which we'll talk about. But first, a growing number of voices are looking at the challenges. They're calling for a rethink of immediate priorities and how to achieve them. For example, former NATO Secretary General and longtime paid advisor to Ukrainian politicians, Anders Fogh Rasmussen, has proposed that Ukraine join NATO, but stripped of the territories occupied by Russia. What do you think?
Well, I think everybody is absolutely correct about the fact that the best security guarantee for Ukraine or for any European country of today is membership in NATO and strong armed forces. We have second, but we don't have first. And it's absolutely clear that in order to win this war, we need to return our territories and our people, which are now
What
under
if you
Russian
can't get security
occupation.
guarantees for all of your territories?
Well, security guarantees is just to liberate the territories, and then security guarantee, as we know it, from Euro-Atlantic security is the membership in NATO. So there is no better security guarantee in Europe today for Germans, Dutch or Czechs as NATO membership and strong armed forces.
Should Ukraine consider Rasmussen's proposal? Should NATO allies consider the proposal?
No, we don't trade our territories.
So no, it's not something that you would consider. You know, in the meantime, there is this so-called Kyiv Security Pact. These are, you know, intended bilateral security arrangements intended to bridge to full NATO membership. G7 countries have agreed to provide bilateral guarantees, but none has done so fully so far. How do you see the prospects for accelerating the bilateral deals?
Well, the bilateral negotiations are going on with a number of countries. The first round of such consultation between Ukraine and Germany also took place recently, so we are in the process. And indeed, the Kyiv Security Compact foresees those security guarantees on the way of Ukraine to NATO, while supporting Ukraine with weapons, with financial help, and to make sure that we can win this war.
But again, you know, talking about the timing, one of the arguments of Rasmussen is that time is really of the essence, that you can't wait, that this maybe needs to happen within the next year or so. And I'd like to highlight one of the reasons for that, because you are facing the challenge of shaky support on the political front, both in the EU and the United States. Let's begin first, you know, here in the EU, where you are serving as an ambassador. Not all EU countries are backing Ukraine anymore. Let's have a look. Slovakia, once one of your biggest supporters, will stop its military aid. Hungary blocking new EU funding for the war. We're waiting, of course, to see the makeup of what the government in the Netherlands will be and what they will do. How concerning, when you look at the picture in the EU, is all of this for you? And do you worry that other countries might break away?
Well, look, when I, as diplomat, look at what our guys and girls are delivering at the front line, I think it's absolutely possible for us diplomats to deal with respective governments which might be skeptical. And winning the hearts of minds of people and politicians is, well, my job here in Germany and the job of my colleagues overseas or in Hungary and in Slovakia. I think that Europe of today realizes its power and importance and its role in the international relations. We've been talking today a lot about leadership here at this forum, and this is something which I think Ukrainians who are fighting this war against the powerful Russian army are expecting from leading European countries, for example, from Germany.
Well, one thing is the expectation, the other is what is actually getting delivered. So let's hop across the pond to the United States, because U.S. support is also at a critical juncture. Biden and Defense Secretary Austin have announced more weapons, but getting aid packages through Congress has been blocked. It's been said by the White House that more than 90% of the approved military funding for Ukraine has been spent. How risky are these delays in getting additional funding approved for Ukraine? And is there the risk that you could start to feel this on the battlefield?
Well, on one hand, I'm happy I'm ambassador to Germany, not dealing with the United States, and cannot comment that in details. But on the other hand, I absolutely agree with you. If you just think a second that every day spent in this war means dozens, even hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers dying, then every day counts. And this is also my clear message to all the decision makers: think in terms not of territories, but of people, of military and civilians under Russian occupation dying every day.
And with those stakes being so high, again, to bring it back to the funding and the political support, you know, your politicians have been saying how vital the support is from your Western partners. What happens if Donald Trump or, you know, a politician who shares his beliefs wins the White House next November? Because there's, within his party, the Republicans, a vocal group opposed to further aid to Ukraine. It's a real issue. It's a potential problem for you, isn't it? Because, I mean, Trump, he's demonstrated an affinity, for example, in Russia, and he hasn't always sided with your country, has he?
Well, it's about American people to decide who will be governing the
What if that's their decision? What if they decide on him?
My decision.
What if they decide on him or somebody who's like him?
Well, I'm happily not the ambassador to the United States.
What would that mean for Ukraine? How are you preparing for that prospect?
But I know what Americans value at most is freedom and democracy. These are core American values, by the way, also core European values. And I do hope that the broad support in the United States for this fight for democracy and freedom will also reflect in the results of the elections.
Okay, let's turn to another aspect, because even if your remaining partners continue to support you, the head of your Defense Intelligence Agency had a pretty sobering assessment of the overall situation of the ability to deliver. He said the following: "It is absolutely undecided how long the West will be able to maintain sufficient supplies of resources to Ukraine." We're seeing that EU countries are already running down their stocks of tanks, ammunition, missiles. You serve as ambassador to Germany. Germany's defense minister recently acknowledged that the EU will likely miss a March deadline to deliver all of the 1 million rounds of shells that it has promised over the year. How high do you see the risk that your partners can't keep up the pace to meet Ukraine's needs?
Well, from what I heard from my German colleagues and from what I hear from my fellow colleagues, diplomats and ambassadors of Ukraine to different countries, the support will not be diminished. And I got direct calls from my colleagues from the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Germany, saying, guys, we will continue to support you. And look at the figures in the budget of the Ministry of Defense of Germany for the next year for support of Ukraine. It's doubled, and this is the right way to approach things. I agree, we all, not only our partners, we all face these problems of ammunition, enough air defense systems, because I can count all those systems and just imagine where, if I were kind of chief of staff, where can I place those 5 or 6 air defense systems which we got from Germany? Where I place some 50 of Gepard Flakpanzer to protect critical infrastructure which is being daily shelled by Russians, or protect our troops. This is why our call is to give us the weapons to defend cities and the troops, and to advance. And for advancing, we need aircrafts, we need battle tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, and of course, artillery. This is the war which combines features of the World War I with artillery barrages, and World War III with immense use of drones and artificial intelligence.
We've been hearing from the Ukrainian administration that one of the biggest priorities has been pushing to increase your own production of weapons and equipment. Tell us, why is this so important, and how quickly can you do it in a meaningful way to really make a difference?
Well, because we need to reconsider the way the weapon is being produced. For example, the usual delivery of an air defense system will be supported by a number of rockets, which will be delivered to the client. So the number of rockets which is being delivered in peaceful times, we use within 1 or 2 days. That means that if we get a Patriot system or IRIS-T system in times of war, it must be supplied by a bigger number of rockets. The same is with tanks and howitzers. How many shells are being shelled by a howitzer in Germany in peaceful times? We do it kind of hundreds a day, and this is different approach to production system and to technologies. And this is why we say and invite producers of weapon systems from Germany and from all over the world to start R&D and production localization in Ukraine. This is the place where the weapon is needed.
So then give us some concrete examples of the types of contracts, indeed, that you're hoping to attract and sign, because you're pushing these joint ventures with companies from around the globe to manufacture in Ukraine, as you've highlighted. There's a big industry conference in Washington next week. What do you want to come out of that, just briefly?
Well, I have seen a list of companies which are being invited. From what I understand,
there's a lot of hopes riding on this particular.
Pardon?
There's a lot of hopes riding on this particular conference, though, isn't there?
Well, we had a first defense industry forum in Ukraine back in September. The Minister of Strategic Industries was a part of Ukrainian delegation back in October here in Berlin, meeting main German companies. And we cannot exclude that such a bilateral forum with Ukrainian and German defense companies will be held later this year or next year. But the first company, I think, the first company which will open a repair hub would be a German company in Ukraine.
Why would these companies want to do business in Ukraine? Because the challenges, there's some major challenges ramping up domestic production while war is raging. Investors, in particular, and this has been highlighted as the biggest one, they're concerned about an unreliable legal system and corruption. These, of course, are not problems that are easily solved, and they predate the war.
Oh no! When you talk about this with German business, they first think about security of premises, security of people,
well, your finance minister has highlighted that the corruption in the legal system is what he is hearing as some of the biggest things among these concerns of these companies.
In times of war, there is no tolerance, zero tolerance in our population towards corruption. Just imagine every morning Ukrainians wake up, look at the reports about air defense system down in Russian rockets and drones, and just sending the money to the armed force of Ukraine. How those people would accept any signs of corruption in the government. So eradicating corruption, and we have established in the last 6 years a highly effective system of countering corruption, which is, by the way, was highly evaluated by the European Union in terms of preparing Ukraine to grant us the status of the country to start negotiations.
So then tell me, when we look at the defense ministry, you have a new defense minister as of September. His predecessor, he made some big promises, because when we're talking about, in particular, corruption, we have to look at that ministry. There have been allegations of mismanaged military contracts. It's really put a stain on the ministry. The former minister, who was not personally implicated, he said when he left office that he was confident the ministry would return prepayments to suppliers that have gone missing. We're talking about $980 million in weapons contracts that missed their delivery dates at one point this year. Some prepayments for weapons simply vanishing into overseas accounts of weapons dealers. Can you really guarantee that all of that will be sorted?
Well, I heard for the first time about overseas accounts, and once again,
those are according to reports made to Parliament.
And again, our government and this minister changed the team and introduced a new mechanism to make sure there is no possibility for corruption. And look at the interest of the defense companies to step into the business. They sincerely not talking to us about any legal terms or problems or allegations about corruption. They see here not challenges but opportunities to help us creating a future and modern Ukrainian armed force. And this is what we need, and many of European countries need that too.
I'm going to move on now, because, you know, besides what we have been discussing with regard to corruption, especially in the defense ministry, there are also a lot of public disagreements that have been gathering attention recently, in particular between your president and your commander-in-chief, General Valery Zaluzhny. Zaluzhny made this comment saying that the war is at a stalemate unless you have some sort of massive technological leap to break the deadlock. Zelensky very publicly has refuted this. Such a public display of disagreement between your top general and the president has raised eyebrows, including among your partners in the West. Are there cracks in unity at the top?
Oh no, you know, I just jumped in to help to communicate about Ukraine for my Minister of Defense, and I'm absolutely sure I would jump in for everybody from my government. Of course, it's a good sign of diplomacy to always speak with one voice. This is the most effective way of communication. But still, this is also a kind of democracy. You know, we've been dealing with a huge problem of trying to persuade people to manage expectation on the Ukrainian counteroffensive. So it was kind of back in May and June this year. So we expect Ukraine now to break through. But then, if you come back
and we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. But I want to talk about the politics for a second here and the leadership, because you know, Zelensky, further to that, appeared to publicly swipe at General Zaluzhny, reminding of the hierarchy and warning that the country's military leadership should not be entering politics. Zaluzhny, when we look at him as a figure, he's a career military officer, he's hugely popular. He is seen potentially as a threat to Zelensky if he were to ever choose to enter politics. Do you think Zelensky's scared of that? Is that what's really at play here?
Well, this President Zelensky is a man who knowingly said, I don't need a ride, I need ammunition, back at the beginning of the war. So if you think Ukrainians can be scared by some way of disagreements which came to public, but no, we are not scared by Russian rockets and Russian troops in the vicinity of Kyiv. There is nothing that can scare Ukrainians. You know, this is the reality of today. Sometimes I think we are working 25 hours a day, and President Zelensky and General Zaluzhny see each other, I think, several times a day.
Let's just quickly come back to General Zaluzhny's comment, the substance of it, which was, Ukraine and Russia are at a stalemate. Do you agree or disagree?
We do not see major advances of Ukrainian troops. And what General Zaluzhny also meant...
So you agree?
That we have no major advances, well, define major advances. Yes, in comparison with what we achieved back...
Because that sounds like a stalemate.
Well, it might be stalemate for the moment, but it's not a Zugzwang.
The president's office, though, says that, and I'm paraphrasing here, this was one of their swipe backs, that essentially plays into the enemy's hands.
Discussion plays into the enemy's hands. Well, quite possibly,
that you might be at a stalemate.
But the stalemate is not because we have discussions. The stalemate is because we're not armed enough. The stalemate might be, or insufficient advance, might be because we got from our partners a bit more than 50 tanks, or we have 3 IRIS-T systems from Germany, which is maximum Germany could deliver within those 2 years. But as I always say, just place those 3 systems with the range of 40 kilometers on the territory of 600,000 square kilometers in Ukraine. This is the reality.
So, you know, one of the things that has been raised when you're talking about that and what's going on the battlefield is that ultimately you need more manpower as well. It's not just the supplies that are coming in from your Western partners and the ones that you were trying to generate on your own. You've had to resort to a draft. The war has been prolonged. It's been said there are limited opportunities for rotation of soldiers on the line of contact. There are reports of some even evading the draft. We understand that Zelensky is going to get a list of reforms this week about what might be done to improve mobilization. And I'm just wondering, in your personal opinion, how can you counter war fatigue and motivate your citizens more for what might be a long war?
Well, in order to understand this, you need to travel into Ukraine. So anytime I'm back home or I'm corresponding with my friends at the front line, with Ukrainian soldiers who are being trained here in Germany, or with my parents, there is no such thing as fatigue in Ukraine. But from time to time, I see this fatigue here in Germany. But this is not a fatigue from the war, but rather from media reports about the war. You know, in times where, when you are protecting your home and your family, you cannot just fall back and say it's too much for me. There is so much at stake for Ukraine. It's our democracy, it's our freedom, it's our future. This is what we are fighting for.
You're up against a country that has 3 times your population, and time doesn't really seem to be on your side. And I'm just wondering, you know, when you talk to the top politicians of your country, you always hear that the goal is to recapture all of Ukrainian territory, and that seems pretty steadfast. And I'm wondering just how personal that goal is for you, and whether or not you still think it's realistic, given all of the challenges that we've been highlighting.
As soon as you start thinking not about territories, but about people, you realize that you need to go forward. It's about millions and millions of Ukrainians on the occupied territories who waits for Ukrainian soldiers knocking their door and say, "You're free, we are here," and having Ukrainian flags on the occupied territories. It's about people we are fighting for, and this is why we need to liberate those who are in Russian captivity since 2014 in Crimea and in Donbass, and in the captivity of Russians since February 2022 in the southern Ukraine.
There are some, though, that are saying that the prospects of you winning back all of your territory appear to be dwindling, and that maybe Ukraine should shift focus. I'd just like to read you a quote, and this is from Philip Breedlove, retired U.S. Air Force general and former NATO commander. He says the following: "This war will end exactly how Western policymakers want it to end." The implication there is that it really hinges on the West's support. Is success in some ways out of your hands? Do you see that maybe in the next year, the next 2 years, depending on what the mood is, your hand might be forced?
I think what we are lacking in many countries is the readiness to lead. The word leadership I heard today 100 times. And this is exactly what we need, a leadership to make right things and to help us to win this war and to fight the freedom and the peace back to Europe.
Ambassador Makeiev, thank you so much for joining us on Conflict Zone.
Thank you.